Over the last 6 episodes in this season of A Brief History of Triangle Sports, I've highlighted the genesis, demise, and lasting impact of the Raleigh-Durham Skyhawks. But what happened to the World League of American Football? Well, in the NFL, if it ain't making money, then it ain't worth keeping around, no matter how useful the minor league might have been had owners properly used it. According to reports around that time, the NFL was losing roughly $30 million a year when newly elected Commissioner Roger Goodell shut down the final incarnation of their minor league. At that point, it was called NFL Europa. This was on June 29th, 2007. Now, that seems like a ton of money, but consider the NFL was pulling in $6 billion in annual revenue that year. That's $6 billion with a B. Consider revenue ballooned to $18 billion annually in 2022 and will continue to go up with every new TV deal. ESPN estimated the cost of operating the Spring League in its final season was around $500,000 per NFL team. Consider the minimum salary for a current NFL player heading into the 2023 season is $750,000. So, yeah, don't think for a moment NFL owners were hurting financially to keep the minor league running. Look, every spring football league that has popped up since, from the multiple XFL incarnations to the Alliance of American Football, has been motivated by the wrong things, mainly TV ratings and profit. As I'll highlight in conversations with former East Carolina head coach Steve Logan and former Carolina Panthers quarterback Jake Delhomme, both of them alumni of NFL Europa, minor league football has to be seen as an investment if NFL owners ever truly want to make football better.
The Triangle has the most unique landscape for sports. 3 major universities along Tobacco Road with rabid fan bases, a Stanley Cup champion, an NFL team right down the road, and heavily invested transplants. Not to mention an interesting mix of sports teams that were. Joe Ovius brings you a brief history of Triangle sports, a candid conversation with those who help shape why sports matters here.
Steve Logan officially resigned as head coach of East Carolina in December 2002. I'll use that word again, officially. What actually happened at the end of his successful run in Greenville was contentious and probably worth its own brief history of Triangle sports episodes. Logan and Mike Hamrick, the ECU AD at the time, did not see eye to eye on the direction of the program. So Logan agreed to buyout terms, which included his annual base salary of $200,000 until January 1, 2006. Burned out by the experience, Logan took a hiatus from football. But if you learn anything from this podcast, the gravitational pull of the game is very hard for football people to escape. And the idea of NFL Europa, which was football stripped down to its bare essence, intrigued him.
I had cleared out my office at East Carolina really before the day came that I officially left because I knew I was leaving. I was completely smoked. I was working with some people that were not healthy for me to be around. So I drove home that afternoon. And when I left East Carolina, I walked in my home and the phone was ringing, literally. I picked it up and it was a man named Doug Graber. Now, Doug Graber used to be the head coach at Rutgers, but he had transitioned into NFL Europa and he was the head coach at Frankfurt. And I walked in, picked the phone up, and he said, "Steve, I heard you're leaving East Carolina. Would you come be the offense coordinator here in Frankfurt?" And I said, "Doug, I am so burnt right now. I don't want to see another football again as long as I live."
You weren't surprised that your phone was ringing, though, right? I mean, you had a track record. You had Jeff Blake.
Yeah,
you had David Garrard, Crandall. I mean,
yep, I had not screwed any of them up.
Yeah,
and so, but I told Doug, I said, "No, thank you," and hung the phone up. And I went fishing literally for 1 year, nonstop, and I just stared at the water. And I happened about a year later, I was in Lubbock, Texas, watching my youngest son, play a baseball game. He was playing for Campbell University. And my phone rang, and a guy named Rick Lance, who was a longtime defense coordinator at the University of Virginia, who is in and of the Belichick family out of the Naval Academy. Rick had been granted the head coaching job at the Berlin Thunder in NFL Europe. Well, there it was again, NFL Europe on my doorstep. And he wanted to know would I be the offense coordinator. And I said, you know what? Yeah, what the heck? The rest is history, but I can, as I've shared with you before, NFL Europe was the single best football job I have ever had. I loved it. The fact that you could play a football game and the world didn't melt down around the victory or the loss.
Yeah.
It was exactly what you said. It was so refreshing. We would go play football in Berlin Stadium or Amsterdam or London or wherever we were at the time. We were over in Europe, and we were playing with NFL players. It was a high quality football. And we would play the game in front of anywhere between 20 and 40,000. Everybody had a good time. And at the end of the game, Joe, both teams would go upstairs in the stadium and we would have a meal together. Because, again, it was developmental. It was serious. Everybody wanted to win.
Sure.
But it was developmental first and foremost. And it just was, again, not the end of the world. And, having said that, my first year in NFL Europe, we went 10-1 and won the World Bowl.
World Bowl 12.
Yeah. And which had never been the NFL wanted all of those teams to go 5-5.
Sure.
And they made the talent very level on purpose. But I had a young man, in fact, Bill Belichick. I went to the Patriot camp, and I was there for about a week because I was going to work with Tom Brady's backup, a young man named Rohan Davey of LSU fame. Mm-hmm. And Rohan and I hit it off. Rohan was NFL Europe Player of the Year. We're 10-1, World Bowl champs. And, then I was there 2 more years after that and played in another World Bowl and lost. And then the third year I was there, we missed a field goal on the last play of the game to put us in the third World Bowl. So, I think in 3 years of NFL Europe football, my personal experience was 24-6.
Specific to Rohan Davey, one thing that keeps popping up and talking about, whether it's the World League of American Football or NFL Europe, humble keeps popping up as a word to describe the players because they were something in college, told a lot of things of where they're going to go. Doesn't pan out that way. Yeah. But this is an opportunity. This is a second opportunity. Yep. So in your years of being around quarterbacks, we'll use Rohan Davey as the example here. What was his level of wanting to learn?
Well, see, this is what people don't understand, Joe. Rohan he had been on the Patriot roster for 2 years when he was assigned to NFL Europe. The way it worked was, for instance, Bill Belichick calls Rohan Davey and says, look, Rohan, we think you're good. You're never getting on the field here.
You're not getting reps.
You're not going to get any reps. We need you to develop. We want to assign you to NFL Europe. Do you want to go? Mm-hmm. And, of course, 99% of them say sure. And so that's the preamble to all of that. So once that happens, then you get these guys. We would have our training camp down in Tampa. All 8 teams would go down there, and we would have training camp. We'd scrimmage against each other, make our cuts, get on a jet, go to Europe, and here we go. The willingness to learn for those players is at an all-time high, and they are the best of the best to work with because they're hungry. They want to develop. This is a second chance to get them permanently on an NFL roster. Mm-hmm. So every player that was on our team, on any team in NFL Europe, they were 99% of the time second and third year roster NFL football players.
Like the original World League, NFL Europe provided a testing ground for football. If you wanted to see how a potential rules change would affect the game, well, do it in NFL Europe. Go right ahead. For instance, field goals longer than 50 yards were worth 4 points instead of 3. Concepts like a true 2-quarterback system could be explored and prove successful. It provided an incubator for coaching development. Logan cherished all of these aspects of NFL Europe.
We lived in a Marriott in a suburb of Berlin called Teltow.
Okay.
And you'd get up every day, and the bus would run us over to Berlin Stadium to practice. And, but it was just NFL football. We met all day. We practiced. We came home. We looked at the film. You're in all of our meeting rooms. We're in the hotel rooms in the hotel proper. You know, at night, hey, it's Berlin.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Experience
Europe.
some culture. Well, that's where you got into wine, right?
Well, it didn't hurt.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But the whole. I mean, I loved it. Europe, Western Europe is. It's an education daily for somebody that has grown up in the American culture. You learn something every day about a different way of doing things. I loved it.
So let's fast forward to the end here. You left NFL Europe before they shut it down?
The year before they shut it down, I left because NFL Europe was Paul Tagliabue's baby. He's the one that wanted to internationalize the sport, as you mentioned. Goodell, when he was hired, the way NFL Europe worked was each NFL owner wrote a $1 million check to fund NFL Europe. So
Some reports indicated they would lose about $30 million a year.
That's correct. So it was a $32 million investment by the NFL to develop their players. Well, some of the NFL owners didn't like that, blah, blah, blah. So when they hired Goodell, his first charge was to eliminate NFL Europe. That was a known secret. At that point, much to my chagrin, Boston College was calling me, wanting me to come be their offensive coordinator. And I didn't have any other pro opportunities at the time, so I took that job knowing NFL Europe was going to fold. And so that's how that all worked out. And, you know, the Boston College experience for me was 5-star as well. I got really lucky there.
The NFL doesn't seem to be struggling right now in terms of the money that they're making.
No, $1 million per club is chump change.
And the ratings that they're getting. You know, you got these young quarterbacks. Sometimes they'll hit, sometimes they won't. But right now, if you're looking at the AFC side of things, looking pretty good. You got everybody from Josh Allen to Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. I mean, it is the future is bright with exciting quarterbacks. So I can't sit here and tell the NFL they made a mistake in getting rid of NFL Europe.
No, it's not a mistake.
But I feel like NFL Europe would solve a problem that NFL teams have right now with the quarterback position.
There is no substitute for experience. And we all know Kurt Warner was an NFL Europe guy, a guy like Tony Romo, he was an NFL Europe. But you have to be so lucky, minus in NFL Europe, to get the repetitions needed to develop that it's just so rare for a guy like Tony Romo to come along. And because of circumstances, they had to keep playing him at the Dallas Cowboys. And lo and behold, there he is, a 7th-round pick out of Eastern Illinois or whatever he was, and he gets better and better and better. But all I know is that there's no substitute for playing the game. And until, well, locally, let me just jump ahead. The little backup quarterback for the Panthers right now, P.J. Walker.
Yeah.
There's an XFL kid, played at Temple.
Yep.
Everybody knew he had talent, and he goes into the XFL, and he only got 7 weeks before they shut the league down.
Yeah.
And is P.J. Walker a real deal starting NFL quarterback? No, but he's certainly functional and can win you a game. Well, there's another guy, that without the 7 weeks of XFL, he's just nowhere. And so there's always going to be a place for the developmental side of things, and it's just how much the NFL wants to do it.
Well, clearly they don't. They don't even want to partner with these new spring leagues. They didn't want to partner with the XFL. USFL, this new USFL has, I guess, some type of relationship, I guess.
Yeah, the USFL thing, that's a little bit different animal. The XFL, which is coming online.
Yeah, back online.
Version
online. 3.0.
That's exactly right. But the XFL just yesterday signed an agreement with the NFL to work as a developmental tool relative to officials, equipment managers, game operators, obviously football players, that's what NFL Europe was doing. I remember when they hired me in NFL Europe, I think I was, 50 years old at the time.
Okay.
And I was told that, hey, we value your maturity. How about that? Logan and maturity, that doesn't go well together. But anyway, I had them tricked. They thought I was mature. They said, we value your maturity and your ability to develop some young coaches. So they would send young coaches to be my running back coach, tight end coach, wide receiver coach, as I was the offensive coordinator. Now, our offensive line coach was a seasoned veteran, but many of the young men over the 3-year period that I was working in NFL Europe cut their teeth in coaching. I was helping them learn the ropes. And then they went on into the NFL to enjoy some career. So it was all inclusive, the developmental part of it. So I did mention to you a young man in 1990 played for East Carolina named George Kuntz. Mm-hmm. Actually came and played for the Raleigh Skyhawks after he left us. He graduated in 1990, played, and he was told he was too slow, too this, too that. All
right.
All the things that scouts tell you when the numbers don't match up. But the thing about George, he tackled everything on the football field all the time. And he did. He ran a 5 flat, but he played the game at 4.7 because he had such a high football IQ. He could diagnose really quickly. And George went on to play like 10 years. You can look it up on the computer. I think George played a solid 10-year career with the Green Bay Packers at middle linebacker. And, there's one of a million stories. I'll never forget the end of my third year, NFL draft came along, and then the rosters were set after they did all of their cuts. I went through with a fine-tooth comb, and I went through every roster in the NFL, and this would have been in the year 2003 or 4, something like that. And I found on the average there were 17 players per roster that had NFL Europe experience. And I wasn't the only one that knew this, obviously. So the NFL had figured out there's a lot of good talent, but it needs to play the game, but there's not enough room. And so, the NFL Europe thing became a really solid model.
A brief history of Triangle Sports will continue after this break. In the final years of NFL Europe, the spirit of the league as a way to develop talent eroded. Multiple reports, including an ESPN.com postmortem on the league in 2007, explained how NFL franchises were using the 6 remaining teams overseas as a way to stash players on roster exemptions. The thinking went, if you were good enough to play in the NFL, well, front offices wanted you in front of their coaches, at their facilities, eventually playing for their teams. But in the beginning, there were real success stories coming out of NFL Europe, including Carolina Panthers legend Jake Delhomme. As an undrafted free agent signed by the New Orleans Saints, he spent the 1997 season on the practice squad, and then he got word he'd be picking up game reps in Europe.
I found out, so I'm a rookie free agent, and I ended up on the practice squad with the Panthers. With the Saints. And toward the end of the season, they had discussed allocating me is the term that was used to play in NFL Europe. And I was all for it. Didn't know which team or whatnot, but everything was done in Atlanta that particular year. And so I got allocated to the Amsterdam Admirals.
Well, you said you wanted to go. It's reps, obviously. So what did you know about NFL Europe?
I didn't know a great deal about NFL Europe, to be quite honest. And that was probably due to being naive, just coming out of college football, and just wasn't familiar with it a great deal. But I knew there was a league in Europe that they sent some younger players that needed more seasoning. I was all for it because as a quarterback, and especially on the practice squad with the Saints at that time, you're getting just a couple of reps of practice. It's not like you're getting a ton of reps where a receiver, a defensive back, offensive lineman, any of those other positions get tons of reps. So I was looking forward to it, just to be able to go and play. It was a higher level of college football than I had played, and that was going to do me some good to get the playing time and experience. And so once I kind of found out about it, and there was only 6 teams, and a lot of these players were allocated from NFL teams, I was all in. I was excited to go.
The common refrain I hear from guys who had played, and in chatting with Steve Logan, who used to do radio with us, he always talked about, he used the word purity of NFL Europe. These were guys, a lot of guys like you, that were just looking for the opportunity. You're paired with Kurt Warner at that point with the Admirals. So what was the locker room like, in terms of the difference of an NFL locker room?
That's a great word that he used, purity, because I think he's extremely spot on. Because if you look at salary, it was pure. Everybody got paid $1,100, and quarterbacks got paid $1,600. Okay. And so quarterbacks were always treated a little different. And that's a week. That's for 10 weeks. So it wasn't like anybody was getting rich. It was an opportunity. So you didn't have a bonus baby like, let's say, you would in baseball, or a first-round pick or second-round pick would be allocated. They would not be. So it's guys knowing that we're just trying to survive. We're just trying to get an opportunity to maybe play in the National Football League or give ourselves some exposure in case the team that doesn't want us, another team would. So that's what I enjoyed about it. And you had some players who thought they were better than NFL Europe, to be quite honest. That was beneath them. But for the majority, you had guys that truly understood that, well, we're here for a reason. And yeah, I get allocated to Amsterdam, and there's only 2 quarterbacks in camp, myself and this Arena League quarterback named Kurt Warner. And I didn't know anything about Kurt. He's 3 years older than me, or 4, I should say, at that time. He was like 26 or 27. I was 21, 22. So there was a little age gap, but he had went to camp with Green Bay, and we became good friends. If you don't like Kurt Warner, then you have the problem. So he knew he wasn't ready at that time when he went to camp with the Packers, and he started playing arena football, and he swore up and down that the quickness of that game and getting the ball out fast and into tight windows and being accurate helped him. And this was he was giving it one more shot. That's kind of how it was. And I would call back home and talk back to, parents and girlfriend, now wife at the time, and just say, he's a good guy. 2, he's pretty darn accurate. And 3, he's got a quick release. I couldn't say anything else bad about it. He was a pretty good football player, and I'm glad my eyes know what a good football player looks like, I guess you could say.
And then, the rest is history. He goes off to the Rams. He wins a Super Bowl. You end up with the Panthers. You go to a Super Bowl. Do you think that you and Kurt end up having the careers you end up having without NFL Europe kind of keeping you in the mix?
I would like to think if we would both had the same opportunities, we would have been successful. But I just think being able to play in NFL Europe, that did help. And I didn't play in Amsterdam. He played, I think I played 1 game because Kurt had an injury. And we went down until the last hour before our first game, before our coach, Al Luganville, who absolutely despised offense. He thought offense was the worst thing in the world. He liked defense, special teams, then defense and special teams again, then offense. So we went down to the last hour to say, hey, Kurt, you're going to start. Jake, you're going to play a great deal. I'm not asking either one of you to win the game, but please don't lose it. And Kurt looked at me and was like, well, that's a vote of confidence. It was just one of those situations. And Kurt really played well that year. I think we went 7-3. Did not make the championship game. And then I got sent back the following year to Frankfurt. I went with my same offensive coordinator who was in Amsterdam. He left and he went to Frankfurt, and he wanted me with him. And that worked out for me, so I was able to play. So I think it does give you some confidence. There's no doubt.
And I was going to get to your second stint in NFL Europe with the Frankfurt Galaxy, where it's funny, I didn't realize you were playing for a coach who despised offense, because you end up going to Frankfurt, which is the other part of NFL Europe that I always found fascinating, is that you could experiment if you wanted to. You guys basically played a 2-quarterback system the entire time, right down to the World Bowl, right?
We did. And when I got sent to Frankfurt in 99, Joe Clark was the longtime Lindy Infante disciple. Joe Clark was NFL assistant coach for years. He was Kurt and I's offensive coordinator in Amsterdam. There was a parting of ways after that season, and he went to Frankfurt. He wanted me to go with him, so I went to Frankfurt. Dick Curl was our head coach, offensive-minded football coach, and Pat Barnes, who was the 4th-round pick, I believe, out of the Chiefs. I don't think a 3rd round, 4th-round pick, the Chiefs. He got sent over with me. And it was the same situation. We had equal reps in camps. We both did extremely well. And we had a rotated system. And I think because Pat and I'd like to pat ourselves on the back and say we handled it with grace, because we truly pulled for each other. And Kurt and I would have done the same thing. Sure. That's no doubt. But Pat and I handled it. And our team kind of took on that approach that it doesn't matter. We're as one. But our Frankfurt team, we had more guys understanding that, hey, we're minor league football players, and we embraced that role, and we embraced it. And that's why we were a good football team, and we won it all through the World Bowl. I played 2 quarters in the World Bowl, and Pat played the other 2. But it just kind of it clicked. It worked. And we both had some different strengths, and it just worked.
at least for the Raleigh-Durham Skyhawks players, when they went over for their 2-week stint where they did go to Frankfurt, they did go and play the London Monarchs. It was the food. But you're based there now in NFL Europe where all the teams are there. So a Louisiana guy going over and playing in European cities, how did you guys handle that? Did you guys have cafeterias? Did you just have to eat what was ever? Were you looking for a McDonald's? What'd you do?
Well, certainly they did have the fast food restaurants, the McDonald's and things like that. But we all ate in the hotel. And that's the thing. It was very college-like. We all stayed in the same hotel. Okay. And there's only 35 guys on the team. And so it's a very small roster, to say the least. So we all ate in the hotel. Undercooked chicken and boiled eggs was something, and French fries. Those are things that were served quite often. So you had to kind of take a good look at the chicken before you ate it. But pizza was readily available. So if all else fails, pizza was not an issue. Now, I will say when we went to Frankfurt, it seemed like just a better situation. Our hotel was, let's just say, a little bit better. We had a couple of 3 American television stations because of the Army bases that were not far away. We had access. We had 3 guys on our team from West Point when I was in Frankfurt. So we could go onto the Army bases with them. We're using their card and get American type things. And so have that sense of home, so to speak. But yeah, you just you ate what was there, and we're young men and full of testosterone, and normal testosterone, I should say. And we were hungry. We were looking to eat, and we learned how to drink a beer at room temperature. So those were a few things we had to learn in living overseas.
In Frankfurt, you're getting at least good. Were you a beer drinker before you went to Germany?
Yeah, I mean, I was a beer drinker, but listen, we were so young. I mean, you drank the cheapest beer. You're
drinking Bud Heavy. You're drinking Bud Heavy. You're not having this Bavarian stuff, right?
Right. So. And one great story, we clinched the World Bowl. We played in Berlin, and we took the train. This was when I was in Frankfurt. We could take the train to many places. And so we clinched on a Sunday afternoon, and we had about a 4-hour, train ride back. And so some of the coaches bought some beer for us, and I'll never forget, we drank some type of Irish stout, 16-ounce cans, and it wasn't even room temperature. It was warm. But we had no ice. There was no ice on the cart, so on the train. So, we just had to make do. But that's, I think, what made it all so fun.
The NFL Europe shuts down in 2007, and that ends this minor league football experiment that was funded by the NFL. The NFL's tried to maintain its presence. I know they're playing more games in Germany. They're playing more games in London. They have an international players program. I always feel like when I hear stories like this from you, when I hear Steve Logan tell these stories, I feel like it's a missed opportunity because what's the biggest problem in the NFL right now? Injuries, depth?
Well, it's a dollars and cents game. I don't think there's any doubt about it, and I'm not so sure it was a money-making proposition.
No, it was not. It lost a lot of money. It lost a lot of money.
But I truly believe that it can be a proving ground. I just look at the quarterbacks from Damon Heward, who played over a decade, to Brad Johnson, Super Bowl winner, John Kidna, myself, Kurt Warner's in the Hall of Fame. I know JT O'Sullivan played. I'm probably missing, but those are just a few. Tom Newton was our starting guard with the Amsterdam Admirals. Well, he's the starting offensive lineman for the St. Louis Rams when they win the Super Bowl. Just some of the receivers that played that went on, some of the kickers that were in NFL Europe that went on. So I think it can be a proving ground for some players that they're not ready yet, either physically or mentally or whatever it may be. So that's something I wish, because I was a part of, I know what it did bring. And, the NFL went to Germany this year to play. And all the players talked about that was probably one of the greatest experiences they've ever had in their life, the crowd. Well, that's what it was like when I played in Frankfurt. Amsterdam, not so much, but Frankfurt, we averaged 40,000 fans. There was a Pop Warner League, so there was some familiarity with football concepts and things of that nature, and it was awesome. And so to hear that when those guys went over and played in Frankfurt this year, there's no doubt that playing NFL Europe 20, 30 years ago, whatever it may be, there was a fan base that developed.
Do you still have the World Bowl ring somewhere?
I do have it. I think I know exactly where it's at. I'm not a big kind of showy guy, and to say that I'm going to walk around with the NFL Europe World Bowl championship ring. But yeah, I think it's in the exact same place as my NFC championship ring is with the Carolina Panthers. My wife has that in the house, and I have a pretty good idea where it's at. But I do have it, and I tell you what, the thing that I enjoyed, I think Coach hit it right when he said pure, because it was pure, and the relationships that I've had with those guys still to this day, I still have relationships with some of the players that we played together with in NFL Europe, and that was a special time. It was a great deal of fun, and the teams that were the better teams were the one that realized, you know what, we're minor leaguers. Let's go out and let's be the best minor leaguers we can be. That's what we were in Frankfurt, and we were the World Bowl champs.
Requiem for the World League of American Football. Another in a long line of great ideas in sports, but financially unviable for stakeholders. Without it, the Triangle never has the Raleigh-Durham Skyhawks. And without the Raleigh-Durham Skyhawks, hard lessons about professional sports in this market are never learned. So pour one out for the football team that never won next time you go to Carter Finley Stadium, which you can do now because alcohol sales at college stadiums are a thing. I hope you enjoyed this season of Brief History of Triangle Sports. There's more to explore on the CBC Podcast Network, including a deep dive on Russell Wilson and his hotly debated exit from NC State. Titled Never Failed, The Russell Wilson Story, Joe Giglio and I tell you the real story behind his recruitment, his position battle with Mike Lennon, and the reasons why he and former head coach Tom O'Brien were never on the same page about his baseball career. A Brief History of Triangle Sports is written and reported by me, Joe Ovias. Doug Miller handles our final mix, and big shouts to Jason Jennings for digging up all that wonderful treasure inside the WRAL archives.